Hey, what's going on, everybody? Ash here, and I just wrapped up playing a couple of hours of the Sonic Racing CrossWorlds closed beta test, so I figured I'd go ahead and record some impressions for you all, particularly those of you who were not able to get into the beta test yourselves, just to give you an idea of kind of what I played, how the game feels, how it's coming together, and maybe a little bit of what we can expect from the final game. So for the beta test itself, there's not much to it. Really, all you can do is do some basic vehicle customization, equip some gadgets, and then play online with random people and bots. You can't even play with friends yet, so it's very light on features, the beta itself. But there are quite a few. There are like 6 tracks included, including like I think 5 CrossWorld tracks. So there's quite a bit of racing content, just not a lot of stuff around the actual racing yet. So how do I feel? Well, I played, I'd say, a good 10 to 15 races over the past couple of hours, won quite a few of them, so I feel like I have a pretty good handle on the mechanics and how the game feels, and so far, you know what, I'm pretty happy. My perspective on this, I'm coming from being a massive fan of Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. In fact, I might even call that my favorite kart racer of all time, maybe tied with Mario Kart DS, but yes, I like Transformed even more than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I really do think it's that good, so, you know, I have a dog in this fight. Like, I really want CrossWorlds to deliver because Team Sonic Racing didn't. I think everyone kind of knows Team Sonic Racing was relatively disappointing coming off of how excellent Transformed was. So when this was revealed, I was like, oh my god, this looks like there's some elements of Transformed here. Are we back? Are we finally back? Now, we have since learned that Sumo Digital is not developing, Sonic Team is, but there's no reason that doesn't mean that CrossWorlds can't turn out to be great, and you know what? So far, I'm feeling pretty good about it. It's certainly, you can tell it's a beta. It's definitely rough. There's lots of, like, juddering and stuff, and screen transitions, and certain visual elements like track animations and background character animations, they animate at a noticeably lower frame rate than the actual game itself. So, like, the actual racing is perfectly smooth, 60 FPS. The game looks great. It's a real looker. Lots of vibrant colors, but it is a little bit jarring to see the background track elements and some of the characters in the sidelines animate at a noticeably lower frame rate. Hopefully that's something that gets smoothed out in the final release. Also, there's, rather humorously, there are some characters in the sidelines who don't even animate at all. They're just standing there and they're static character models. So clearly this game is still very much in development. I can see this being several months out still, but you know what? The core gameplay feels good. The vehicles feel a little bit heavier than Transformed, but once you get a handle on the drifting, just racing around the tracks feels nice, and every vehicle type too. The cars, the hovercrafts over the water, and then the planes. Everything feels pretty damn good, I have to say. Now, I will say this. Drifting is more important than ever. Cornering almost does not exist in this game without drifting, so don't even think about playing this game unless you're committed to learning the drifting mechanics. Thankfully, though, they're not complex. The drifting feels really good. Just like in Transform, there are multiple charges of drift that you can accumulate, so the longer you hold a drift, the larger a charge you accumulate, and then the bigger a boost you'll get when you release the drift. It all feels really good. There's also a lot of character and vehicle customization, so there's a lot of fine-tuning you can do by mixing and matching different vehicle parts. If you want higher handling, you can do that. If you want a higher top speed or at the cost of lower acceleration, etc., you can do that. There really is a lot of fine-tuning here from what I can tell. And that fine-tuning isn't locked to characters. So, like, you can play as Sonic but have him in a vehicle that has a lower top speed but better handling, you know, or vice versa. What I did with Tails, because he's my favorite Sonic character, I had him in a vehicle that has a higher top speed, which is normally what comes default for Sonic, etc., etc. So there's a lot of customization here. The gadgets are really cool too. You can equip different gadgets to your vehicle that give you different perks, like you can hold up to 200 rings instead of the default 100, and the more rings you have, the higher your top speed is. You can make it so that if you bump into another player, you get a speed boost, kind of like in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe's anti-grav sections. You can make it so that you can steal rings from other opponents when you bump into them. You can re-roll items. So there are a lot of different things you can do with the gadgets, and that coupled with the swappable vehicle parts means there's really a great deal of customization, it seems, in terms of fine-tuning how you want your vehicle to play and the perks you want to bring into each race and such. One of the highlights for me so far is the track designs. The track designs, almost unilaterally, are just fun. There's so much verticality to them. There are fun gimmicks. There are lots of jumps. They're very dynamic, and that's not even getting into the CrossWorlds feature where, you know, you race through the warp ring and then you find yourself in a completely different environment halfway through the race. So, you know, you start in a track like Metal Harbor, and then halfway through, you're transported to Dinosaur Jungle or Kraken Bay, and it just all feels pretty smooth and dynamic. There's a little bit of, I would say a few frame hiccups here and there when you're transitioning to or from the CrossWorld, and that's something that'll hopefully get smoothed out in the final release. But generally, it all feels pretty good, and the CrossWorld mechanic feels fun and exciting. It didn't really start feeling old to me in the races I played. I kind of looked forward to discovering each new CrossWorld and playing it for the first time, and then even the ones that I'd already played, like I got Dinosaur Jungle so many times, but it never stopped being fun. Like, I do like that mid-race warping mechanic. All the tracks they're a lot of fun. They don't feel necessarily too unfair or too gimmicky. They're just well-designed tracks, and in general, I'm just feeling really good about the way the game feels, the track design, and how it looks, and how it sounds. From what I can tell, the music, no surprise, being a Sonic game, is great. There's some awesome remixes here. I do wish I could hear them a little better because there is no sound effects slider in this beta, so you can't turn down the side effects, and there are a lot of sound effects because the game is so chaotic, and that brings me to my main negative point about the game. There is so much chaos due to the items. The items are way overtuned. Players can hold up to 2 items, I believe, and that's too many. The items don't feel intentionally designed and strategic the way they did in Transformed. It just feels like chaotic item spam. I mean, other than the basic boost item that you get, which is one of the wisps from Sonic Colors, that's like a mushroom in Mario Kart. Okay, that you can deploy at times that it makes sense to boost over parts of the track that you can't normally drive on or that would slow you down, to take shortcuts. That feels fine, but everything else, all the offensive items, all the defensive items, it just feels like a free-for-all. And there were so many parts in races where I didn't even really know what was going on because I was getting hit by so many things. All the people around me were getting hit by so many things, and it just felt like utter chaos. So the items really need to be tuned down. I would even go so far as to say that players probably shouldn't be able to hold more than one item at a time, especially if they're not going to tune down some of these items, because it's just too much and it gets in the way of the pleasure of racing. Like I said, the racing feels good, the drifting feels great, the track designs are really fun, but the items are just so overwhelming that they get in the way of it all, and that unfortunately is the state of the game right now. So I would say that if there's one major thing that's wrong with the game right now, it is just the items there are too many of them, they're too powerful, they're too chaotic, and other than the basic boost item, it's just too much. So hopefully Sega will listen to this feedback, or Sonic Team, I should say, will listen to this feedback and just tone down the items. It also feels a little bit too easy to lose rings. Like, of course, if you run into an obstacle or somebody attacks you with an item, it makes sense to lose rings, but right now you lose them even if you run into another player, or even if you run into a wall, you lose some rings. So that feels like maybe a bit too punishing. And the last thing that I don't love, but your mileage may vary here, there's no longer any risk in air tricks. So in Transformed, for example, if you played it or you remember it, you could do air tricks to build up a boost for when you land, and the more tricks you do, the bigger your boost would be. However, there was a risk element to it. If you try to fit in too many air tricks and you're in the middle of a trick when you hit the ground, then you would spin out and lose all your boost, and obviously that's way worse than if you had just not done any tricks at all or just gotten one boost. In this game, there is no risk factor with air tricks. You can just spam the left stick to do whatever tricks you want, but you can't fail. Like, you can just spam it and then the game will automatically stop you from doing any more air tricks right before you hit the ground. So there's no risk or strategy or skill really to it. You're just spamming the left stick to do as many air tricks as possible before you land, knowing that you're never going to spin out or have any sort of punishment for trying to fit in too many air tricks while you're in the air. So that I personally don't like. In my opinion, it kind of lowers the skill ceiling, and it makes a mechanic that I loved and Transformed feel a little bit neutered here in comparison. However, some of you out there might prefer that and might prefer not having that additional risk factor while you're trying to juggle so many other things. So I can see that going either way for players. For me personally, it's a minus, but what are you going to do? And hey, it is still the beta. It is still very much in development, so everything I'm saying may be addressed or different by the time the full game releases. So overall, I want to say I'm pretty excited. There's a solid base here. Like I said, the racing feels good, the drifting's great, the track designs are great, it looks great, it sounds great, but then there is that major drawback element of the items being way too much and interfering with the racing so much throughout every race, and it's just insane how overbearing those items are. And then again, the air trick thing is a bit disappointing, and of course, the fact that you can definitely tell it's a beta. That's obviously, there's some rough elements here, like I said, background elements are animating at an obviously lower frame rate, some characters just don't animate at all. The game crashed once on me, and then I got a comm error and couldn't get back into the game for a little while, so stuff that you would expect from a beta, but it is still important to point those things out. But overall, after having played the game for an hour and a half or 2 hours or so, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing what form the game takes when it does come out later this year, and so far, I think there's a solid base case here, and if you're a fan of Transformed like I am, I think you should be excited, cautiously optimistic. Is it going to be better than Transformed? I'm not convinced of that yet. Definitely not. But I had a good time, and it's definitely already a far sight better than Team Sonic Racing, in my opinion. So take that for what you will. I hope you enjoy these impressions. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy what we do here at Good Vibes Gaming, GVG, please check out our Patreon. Follow us on Bluesky. We stream on our Twitch channel multiple times a week, but even if you just drop a like and a subscribe, every little bit really does help, and we super appreciate all your support. Bye!